Hi, I'm Ken. I'm going to be giving you some tips and tricks for using JMARS, specifically the layer manager and a few other things like the add layer dialog. So when we say layer manager in JMARS, we mean this section here where we see all of our layers that are either loaded into JMARS or available in JMARS. So to get started, I'm just going to show you a couple of quick things that might be useful and helpful. We have this section of overlay layers here that we basically expect that most users may want access to quickly. You can get these out of the way a few different ways. We have this little separation bar here that you can click and drag to wherever you prefer. Now, whenever you make a change like this, it will get remembered for you on the computer you're using. So when you start JMORS back up on that same computer, it should be in the exact same spot. Another way that you might do it is this little area right here. As you can see, this little arrow, click that, it'll just minimize. Click it again, it'll maximize again. So that's useful sometimes, especially as you get more layers in here to be able to resize this. Another common and necessary thing in JMARS is to be able to add layers. Clicking this is actually a button up here to add layers. Now, if you click it once, it'll open up. You can see the little X signifies that it's open. That little X to close it back, or you can click anywhere on the button. There are other ways to close this dialog. This little X here helps you close it, and there's a close button at the bottom. Now, one thing, so this dialog here is used to add layers. One thing that people don't see, obviously, sometimes is that there's an option here to auto close add layer. So what that means is, so I deselected it now. So what that means is if I open up the add layer dialog and I add a layer, it was supposed to stay open. We're gonna have to do this over again, Meg. So I add a layer and it closed it. But if I had it deselected, it's supposed to stay open like it happens on Scott's all the time. There we go, just like that. Add a layer, the dialog stays open. So if you'd like for it to close once you've completed an action here of adding a layer, select this option, and that will make it so that it auto closes after you add a layer. I'm going to go delete some of these layers that I added. Okay, so I'm going to show another feature that's useful here, which is our favorites. I currently don't have any layers favorited, but if I come in here and I select the colorized elevation map, it shows up in our favorites. What that does allows me to come here, come straight to my favorites and add that layer without having to do any searching or browsing. So I'm not going to go into the details of searching and browsing here. We have tutorials for that. Favorites is really useful for quickly being able to get to a layer that you use all the time. Okay, so one topic I really wanted to touch on was the idea of this layer manager and how stacking here in this layer manager matters. So we have 3 layers. Let's minimize this for now, focus on these 3. So we have 3 layers that are here. If I turn off the top 2 layers, turning off the custom shape layer really didn't change anything as far as the view goes. We can see the map that I have here underneath. If I turn the map that's higher in the layer manager, higher on the stack here, we'll only be able to see that because it's basically completely opaque and you can't really see the map underneath it. You can change that by adjusting the transparency using this slider. It's for this one particular layer that I've selected. The other way you can change that is by clicking and dragging things on top. So now this Mola shaded relief is the map that's higher in the stack, and you can only see that one because it's completely opaque. So I'm going to drag things back to the way they were and talk about the shape layer. So if I delete this layer, the shape layer is actually on top. There's nothing currently on the screen for the shape layer. But if I go ahead and draw a shape, let's say I draw a polygon and I try to just do something silly. There's my shape. everything's fine. Now, if I were to drag this map back on top, my shape disappears, and that's because, again, of the full opacity, the fact that this map is opaque and it's on top. So the order of these layers matters a lot. Now, if I go back, add my favorite map, again, my shape layer seems to have disappeared. It didn't really disappear. Again, it's just underneath this other map. So to get my shape layer back on top so I can work with it again, just drag it to the top of the layer manager. So hopefully that's helpful. Another thing you can do if you're, like, for example, I'm working on my laptop here, so I don't have a lot of screen real estate. One thing that's useful is to tear out this whole layer manager entirely and give myself more real estate in JMARS on the main view. The layer manager works pretty similar. It works almost exactly the same. You can add layers and do everything you want to do with it torn out. Excuse me. If you accidentally cover it up and you have no idea where it is, you can show layer manager under the view menu, and it'll actually bring it back to the front of the screen. So it's to the front. So it's Control H for a shortcut, but it'll make it visible. Now, if I want to redock it, there's a couple of ways of doing that. I can click View Dock Layer Manager, and it'll put it back for me. Tear it out again for demonstration purposes. I can also just close it, and it'll dock it back for me again. So that's I think that's the only two ways to get it back in. So yeah, if you close it, it'll automatically dock it back for you. Another useful option, one that I use all the time, is, let's say, for example, that I want to start up JMARS with my, I'm going to go ahead and delete this shape. One second. So let's say that I want to start up JMARS with this custom shape layer. Every time I start JMARS, I don't want to have to go load it every single time. So I can select File, select Startup Layers. Now, give me a list of layers, basically asking which ones do you want to start up with when you start JMARS. So if I select, let's say I select MOLA and the custom shape layer, select Save. When I start up JMARS next, again, on this machine, it will bring in this layer and this layer, start it up, and I will see those layers right off the bat without having to do any add layer action. Startup layers. All right, I think that's actually most of the topics. I think that's all the topics I wanted to cover for tips and tricks of the layer manager. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Ken, I got one. Let's say that I'm a longtime user of JMARS and I'm familiar with the way for adding layers in the previous version of JMARS, which was more category based instead of search based. How can I get to that kind of interface?
So we've attempted to replicate that under the Browse tab. So search allows you to come in here and search for whatever you want, and you should start seeing, anything that has a valid result related to what you type. So MOLA, even these like 128 ppd, you can see that's under a MOLA category. So that's why it's going to be returned. Themis should return everything related to Themis. But in the Browse tab, you can go the way that we used to do it in previous versions of JMARS and select particular categories. For example, if you select based on instrument, you then get subcategories. You can select the particular instrument you prefer, in this case, Themis, and you can see imagery for Themis or regional mosaics, global mosaics. So you're able to kind of drill down to get to the product that you're looking for using drop-down lists and
so everything that used to be there previously is still there in the new interface.
It should all still be there, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The other thing is there, since we've seen all three of the four tabs, the custom map tab, any custom maps that you've uploaded will show up in here. You're able to favorite that as well, or click on it to load it here from this. But so yeah. Any other questions?
If you collapsed overlays and user prefers that it's all collapsed every time they start JMARS, do they always have to open collapse it, or JMARS will remember even after they exit JMARS and started in a form, either collapsed or expanded?
Yeah, basically whatever you prefer for when JMAR starts up, you can that's what you should have when you close JMARS. Or actually, it doesn't really matter. It's if I collapse the overlays layer, I close JMARS now, I start it back up, it will remember it and show it in the collapsed mode.
Okay, that's
So
cool.
now that I've opened it, JMARS already remembers that, and if I close JMARS right now, it'll bring it back expanded. So and even anywhere in between, these little dots are meant to say, sure, you can click and drag this, and if you do it right there, that's where JMARS should bring it back when I start JMARS up again.
Nice. Very nice. And there is a little dots on the side. You can
Yeah.
you can drag
Yeah,
it.
that same little thing will help you expand or minimize the main view. Really, it gives you a lot more real estate on the layer manager versus the actual main view. So whatever you prefer. Now you can go ahead and drag that all the way over to the end if you'd like.
Oh,
You got to remember that's the little guy to help you open it back up and see the layer manager.
can you open press the plus button again just for a second?
Sure.
And if you click outside of this open dialog, will it close also?
Yes, that's another way to close it. Good point. That is the other way, by clicking anywhere essentially inside of the main view. I think if you click outside of the main view, it doesn't close it, but anywhere in the main view, it's JMAR is basically saying, sure, you want to get back to this view and get that dialog out of your way.
Great.
And another thing that could be useful is you see this default view here of whatever layers we've sort of flagged as might be useful to you. But if you start typing and you decide you want to get back to that, you can just hit this little X right here that will clear out what you've entered and go back to that default view. There you go. Any other questions? Okay.